You're gonna cry?
Because he's pushed the record button.
Don't
you dare cry.
Let's just hold hands. Make me feel better.
Self-conscious about my mouth too, because when I'm not paying attention, I go like that.
Resting face is open mouth.
Yeah.
Guppy. Resting guppy face.
No, step 3. If they're lost, bring them to a fresh pond.
Okay, Connor, from this point on, I need you to be, your only job is to hold that mic.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any children?
How many children do you have? You've been married 5 years. How many kids do you have? Why haven't you had kids yet? Why don't you just adopt?
When we first got married, we realized it was probably going to be hard to have kids, and so we were trying, and nothing was really coming of it. And so we went to the doctor on campus. I was going to BYU, so we went to the Student Health Center at BYU, and
It's our second year.
second year.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody there is really a specialist in fertility or anything like that, but there was one doctor who had some training, and so he was able to talk us through some things. Got Jill on some medication to kind of help with the whole process, but nothing really came of it. Gave us a couple things that we could test out for, and like I said, nothing really came of that. And so he finally told us, I've done everything that I can do, so you're going to have to see a specialist.
We tried a lot of medications, and I actually had surgery, exploratory surgery, at that point, because I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So we stopped preventing. I mean, I think after just 1 year, we started trying on our own. And then we did that for about a year before we started seeing a doctor. And then we saw a regular OB for a while, did some surgeries, tried a couple of medications and things like that. We didn't start seeing a reproductive endocrinologist, the real intense stuff, until 3 years ago. Yeah, so about 5 years into our marriage. And then we started with the hardcore fertility treatments. The OB first put us on Clomid, which is pretty standard as far as that's the first thing you try. And I didn't respond to it at all. We were on the highest dose, and nothing ever happened. So we did that for quite a while. What did we try after that?
I don't remember.
I think we did, after that we did injections, which is kind of the next step up as far as what you can do with just a normal OB before you have to go to a specialist. So we did that for, I would say, about 6 months before we went to a reproductive endocrinologist and started the more intense stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, for 3-4 months, and then we progressed right to IVF. IVF is in vitro fertilization, so they extract my eggs and Logan's sperm, fertilize in a petri dish, and then put them back into my uterus. So everything is done outside of the body, basically. It skips the entire upper reproductive tract, which is where most of my issues are. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, we're gonna get married. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby and a baby carriage. So
So I think throughout the whole process, it was we're gonna get a baby somehow, and we're gonna try our hardest to biologically have a baby, and then if that doesn't work out, maybe we can go to adoption and explore some other options. And so throughout the years, it was, I don't know, not the easiest thing for sure.
No.
I had brothers and sisters that were having babies along the way, and
Lots of friends who got married after us or around the same time or working on their third kid. But I have family history issues of fertility, and it took my parents 6 years to have my sister and I. And I also knew before we got married that I had some issues, so we were a little more prepared going into it. But nothing can really prepare you for 7 years of infertility. Living in Utah, where there's everybody left and right is having babies around you, and so that was hard.
yeah, after we're no longer newlyweds, that was one of the questions was, so
I think for me, anytime someone would ask us about children or if we had kids when we were having kids, it was always painful. Um, we did get, I on one occasion did get someone of our same faith telling us that we were playing God and that IVF is against nature and you shouldn't do that, and that we didn't have any right to play God like that, and that was really hard, especially because it was not a decision we came to lightly to start IVF. At first I was just shocked. I think for someone to say that to us, when it wasn't someone I knew particularly well, and they didn't know our story and what we had gone through, but I don't think I really said anything at the time, but I remember going home and just crying. So we are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that was a big thing we took into consideration when we started IVF. The church doesn't put a lot of, they don't say specifically what you should and shouldn't do, but you're counseled to work with your bishop and pray and find out what's right for your family, and
So I'm gonna make 2 edits of this, one for class and one for like a Facebook edit.
yeah.
So tell me about how this has affected, or during the process affected your relationship with God.
Okay. You want to go first? You want
Yeah.
me
And so the whole process, so throughout the whole process, it was definitely very taxing, and we prayed, all the time about what decisions we need to make, and if what we're doing is good, if it's fine, if we need to do something different. We always prayed for just let us know how we can have children, because that's what we want. We want to have a child, and if it's according to Thy will, we would really like to have a biological child, kind of stuff. And excuse me. Throughout the whole time, when we'd get bad news or something, that definitely would be a blow to your faith. And there were definitely times where I questioned our decisions, kind of question what does God want from us, pretty much. How much does He need to take from us before we can improve ourselves, kind of thing. And so there were definitely times where I was questioning God, I guess. I had my doubts.
I was just going to say that's really interesting for me to hear, because I did not see that at all from Logan during the entire process. That's really shocking to me to hear you say that, because I feel like through everything we went through, Logan was a rock in his faith. And I don't know if maybe now thinking about it, if that was more for me, because I was a mess, so maybe he didn't necessarily show me as much of that side of things, but I feel like it definitely shook my faith a lot more than yours. Mm. For Logan, it was always, correct me if I'm wrong, but I always felt it was a matter of when and how. Logan always would tell me, we're going to have a child. It's, whether it's adoption, biological, whatever, it's going to happen. We just don't know when.
Yeah. So no, I definitely thought that the whole time too. We're going to have a child. It's just a matter of what's it going to take to have a baby. And so I guess the part that I questioned was, why can't we just get to that part? Because we thought long and hard and prayed about what we need to do, if we should go to adoption or if we should do IVF, and all the things that we need to go through, and our answer was always, I don't know, for me it was at least do what you want to do what you feel like you should do. And so we thought, okay, let's just try IVF, and it took a year. I think we did it 4 times, and throughout December to October, I think.
December 2014 to October
2015. And, and so the whole time it was, why do we have to go through this if it's just not working? And we got to a stopping point. We had done it 4 times, and it hadn't worked. And so we were just, miffed. We were, why did we have to do this if it wasn't going to work? If this was our decision to make and we made that decision and we pursued it, then why the hurt? Why so much?
I felt a little, when we decided to do IVF, I felt like that was what God wanted us to do, what we were supposed to do. The really hard part for me, especially when it came to my faith, was all the miscarriages we had through IVF. Because we got pregnant 3 times from IVF, and we miscarried all of those, and that was, that was really hard. I was mostly just wondering if I felt so strongly that IVF was what we were supposed to do. Why does this keep happening? Why do we have to go through this? I guess I kind of felt like I would rather just have not worked at all than to get pregnant over and over again, and then just keep losing the babies, because that was really hard for me, especially because we weren't opposed to adoption. We had always thought that could be the way that we're supposed to complete our family, and but when I felt like we should do IVF, it was hard. I guess that was the hardest part for me as far as my faith goes. It just felt cruel to have to go through all of those losses. when we could have maybe just gone straight to adoption or something else. So that was really hard for me. Still is. Still is something we're working through, but.
So, thank you, by the way, that was beautiful. Were you, either of you, ever given a blessing and that told you that you would have a biological child?
Actually, both of our patriarchal blessings say that we will have children. They don't specifically say biological children.
So mine talks about having children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren when I die. Like I'll have them
on the
surrounding me.
earth. And mine talks about being preserved in childbearing. So that, I feel like, in the beginning gave us a lot of hope because we both felt like we'd been promised that we would have children one way or another. You know, we don't know exactly how those blessings will be fulfilled, but I think that helped through a lot of it. But even, 5 years into it and all the losses, your faith starts to wane a little bit, even with those promises. But
our expectations were different when we started versus 5 years in.
Yeah.
So, tell me what it was like. Just try and go back mentally to the time that you guys decided to give up trying on your own and go through adoption. What was the mental transition? What kind of turmoil? Did you accept it? Were you happy to adopt? That kind of thing.
So I think the way it was set up with IVF was we went through a program that we could pay some money up front, and then it would be less expensive along the way, depending on how many times we needed to do IVF. And so with the program, we had one retrieval, and then how many of our eggs and embryos that came from that we could implant, and we had some benefits as we were implanting along the way. So we got 8 eggs 8 embryos at the end of the retrieval, and so we did two embryos each transfer. So we did it 4 times, and then after that 4th time, that's when we said, what are we going to do now? This is.
We still had another transfer. Our program included 2 egg retrievals.
Yeah.
So we were trying to decide whether or not to go through another retrieval, which is very physically and mentally exhausting, that process. So it was at that point trying to decide whether or not to go through another retrieval to get more embryos or to stop.
Yeah. I think at that point we had a little bit of, discussion, a little bit of, because I feel like for Jill it was mostly, we need to do this just as soon as possible, because if we wait too long, then we're not going to be young enough to have babies.
My biological clock was ticking.
And for me, going through that whole year of IVF, it was really hard, mostly to see her go through all the pain of the miscarriages, and then even throughout the whole processes, it took 2 or 3 shots a day sometimes. Those were painful to see, and I got to the point where she couldn't work anymore, and so I wanted a break. I wanted to say, if we're gonna do IVF, then let's at least wait until we do it again. And so it was October 2015. And we decided, okay, let's take a break through the holidays and decide at the end of the holidays what we want to do next. And so we enjoyed, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it was a good couple of months because we didn't have all the shots, we didn't have all the feeling bad, the emotional up and downs that came with IVF.
We had a year of back-to-back treatments and miscarriages and surgeries just over and over and over again. Yeah. So we took a 2-3 month break, and then
I think pretty close to Christmas when we said
started praying and fasting.
Well, I think we'd done that before that. It was It was the week after Christmas where we started talking to a adoption agency, someone who could help us start with adoption.
So in December, we had pretty much made the decision. We prayed and fasted. We went to the temple, and we decided that to pursue adoption. We knew that we still had benefits on our IVF plan, and maybe down the road we would revisit that. But at that time, we felt like we had done enough, and that we were supposed to pursue adoption. So we started meeting with a caseworker.
So when we started the adoption process, it took a lot of paperwork. And that took, I think, probably a couple months to complete all the paperwork. We had to get our fingerprints for the background checks and stuff like that, because they needed all that information. And we even had to go to some classes that they put on just to get us started as far as what to expect when we got into adoption. So I think that took us to, I think it was 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, we started the paperwork sooner, before we had really decided. So I think in January is when we finished all the paperwork, and then we did our home study, which is basically when they come and walk through your home and interview you and make sure that you're fit to be parents. That was interesting too, that whole process of when you go through adoption, they look at every single part of your life and ask questions that were a little shocking to me at first. I almost felt like an invasion of privacy to me, with how deep they really delve into your life to make sure that you're fit to be parents, which I understand. It's a good thing, but it was just one more thing that I felt, we couldn't get pregnant on our own. We couldn't have a child on our own. With all that, you already feel insecure and like something's wrong with you. And then to be judged by a caseworker, and you have to meet so many strict requirements. That was hard to go through that process as well. But we finished all of that in January, and then we did our home study, our walkthrough, at the very end of January, beginning of February.
I think it was the middle of February.
Somewhere around there, at which point we became approved to adopt.
Looking back now, having a baby, it's a lot easier to say, okay, we understand we had to go through all that because it's worth it. So yeah, definitely looking back, it's a lot easier to say, yeah, he's a miracle and we're very lucky. And we'd go through it again if that's what it took.
In a heartbeat. Yeah. I don't know, someone told us that they wish it was as easy and that we were lucky to have a baby. First, I do feel very lucky to have a baby. If someone said I wish it was that easy, I would just tell them to walk a mile in our shoes because it was not easy. I don't know, someone told us that they wish it was as easy and that we were lucky to have a baby. First, I do feel very lucky to have a baby. It's something that we never thought. We got to the point where we never thought it would happen biologically to have a child. As far as if someone said I wish it was that easy, I would just tell them to walk a mile in our shoes because it was not easy. That's something I've thought a lot about as far as going through all the years of infertility, all the years of IVF, everything that we did. And he is not a result of any of that. He's not an IVF baby. And so a lot of people, I've had people ask me, do you regret doing all of that because you never got a baby out of it? And I think it's taken me a while to get to the point where I can honestly say no. So yeah, I don't regret any of it. I think it's what, even though it's hard, it was what we were supposed to go through.
Mm. While we were doing our adoption throughout the whole process, like I said, I think it was from January towards the middle of February. There were a couple weeks where Jill was sick, and being any other couple, I feel like that would have been like, oh, maybe you're pregnant.
All the signs were there.
Yeah. But in our minds, it was, there's absolutely no way that that she'll be able to get pregnant on her own. There's just no way. It's completely out of the question. We've accepted that. We've moved on. We're going to find some other way to have a baby. And so, just throughout the adoption process, it never got better. She was still sick and throwing up, just normal morning sickness stuff. And one of her friends said even, well, maybe you're pregnant. Have you ever taken a pregnancy test? And, in our minds, it was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I think I actually said that out loud. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm not pregnant.
Yeah, so there's just no way we're pregnant. And so it was when we were getting ready for the home study. I think it was right before that where the question was posed. And I don't know, I guess I feel like in our minds it was the big thing was there's no way, but there's always this little part that's like, well, what if? What if we really are pregnant? But no, there's no way. And so we did the home study, and we kind of got over that hurdle, and through that stress, and over that next weekend.
2 days later.
Yeah, we decided, well, let's at least take the test just to rule it out, just to make sure. And so Jill said, okay, I'm going to take a test this morning. I said, okay, let's just get it over with. And so she took the test, waited 4 or 5 minutes, whatever, and the pregnancy test was positive. And it was the most positive we'd ever seen, because we had taken I don't know, 10 or 20 pregnancy tests throughout.
At least.
Yeah, even just the previous 6 months. You know, and the little line would show up for us when we knew she was pregnant, but it would be kind of light.
Faint, yeah.
But this time it was like the darkest we'd ever seen it. And in our minds, it's like, well, what else could it be? Because there's no way you're pregnant. What else could it be?
At first we thought it was a defective
Oh
test.
yeah. So it was a little dollar store test. I paid $1 for it. So we said, okay, let's go out and buy a real test. Not a real test, but go out and buy a name brand
better,
test.
yeah.
Something that we know has probably more accuracy. So we went out and bought it, came back, and took the test again. And again, that line was just as dark as it could be. And so at that point, we're like, okay, it's not a defective test. What else could it be? There's no way she's pregnant. So maybe there's a cyst that's secreting the hormone.
I just had a miscarriage
Yeah.
a couple months before, so could be from that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we didn't know, so we said, well, let's go in and take a blood test. Go into the fertility center and have them do a blood test. That can tell us for sure what's going on. And so we went in Monday morning, did the blood test. That night they called us and they said, yeah, I mean, the HCG, the hormone, is
Off the charts,
Yeah.
so it was really high.
it indicates that you're pregnant. Yeah, not only are you pregnant, but you're, the hormone is further than we've ever seen it for you. And so we said, okay, well, what else could it be? That was our thought the whole time. What else could? We're still thinking maybe it was just the cyst or something that's something else that's defective. I don't know, something that we need to clear out before we continue on with adoption. And so we went in for an ultrasound the next day. So they were super excited for us, and we were trying not to get our hopes up. But they were excited for us, and they said, let's get you in just as soon as possible the next day. And so we walked in and they did the ultrasound, and they put the little wand on. And the nurse said, there's a baby. And my mouth dropped, like, there's no way. And they let us hear the heartbeat. Total shock. Because at that point, we knew that there was no way she was pregnant, but sure enough, there's irrefutable proof that she was pregnant. That was a crazy day. I mean, we were in shock most of the day.
That was also the part. We actually found out I was 8 weeks pregnant, so it was already 2 months along, which is further than I made it with any of my other pregnancies. And so they even told us, there's a pretty good chance this one is going to stick. 'Cause we never heard heartbeats with any of our other pregnancies, and our HCG numbers never made it that high. But yeah, hearing them flip on the switch, hearing the heartbeat, that was the most surreal moment I've ever experienced in my life. Just complete shock, like you said. Logan was kind of the commentator. He was talking me through each step. I can see a foot now, and I can see another foot, and it's still a boy. I could hear, when they got him out, I could hear him cry for the first time, and I don't even have the words to describe it. But when Logan actually got to bring him over to me and put him on my chest, and I don't know. Just seeing him for the first time, and you just forget everything in your life before, doesn't matter anymore. Our family, I just felt complete after seeing him, that he was the one that we'd been waiting for. the first time I got pregnant, which was actually through IUI, intrauterine insemination, the day that I found out I was miscarrying, the news broke. There was a story in Pleasant Grove of a woman who had something like 6 or 7 babies that she had essentially killed when they were born, and she had hidden them in her garage in like storage bins. And that story broke the day that I found out I was miscarrying, and that was really, really hard, to hear something like that, and that there's this woman out here who's had, 6, 7, in the same city we live in, who's had 7 children that she didn't want and killed, and here we are doing everything that we can, and absolutely heartbroken, losing our first pregnancy, and sorry. It felt really unfair. But I think that's something that I had to work through a lot, knowing that there are so many children out there who are being aborted or killed or placed for adoption because their parents don't want them, and here we are. We feel like we're 2 pretty decent people who want nothing more than to love a child and take care of a child, and why does someone like that get to be pregnant 6 times and I don't? So, if there's a good person who is genuinely confused and didn't want, to, or couldn't raise a child and was considering abortion, and I would tell them that there are people like Logan and I in the world who so desperately want to love a child, and especially when we got into the adoption process and we met a lot of birth moms and we met a lot of adoptive parents and children that had been placed for adoption, and talking to all of them, and adoption is a really beautiful thing, and that may still be something that is part of our lives down the road, still something that we are considering to grow our family, and I would just tell them that's the greatest gift you could ever give anybody. That's something that we so desperately wanted, to have a child, and if there are plenty of people out there that can't have their own biological children, and there's nothing, I think, that you can do greater than giving someone the gift of a child. So I would encourage them to place their child for adoption rather than aborting.
One of the blessings that come from this experience is I feel a lot closer to people who are going through the same experience. And I don't know, I can definitely be more supportive. And every time I hear something bad happening, I want to hug them. But I mean, if I were to tell them any sort of advice, it would be just to do what they want to do, as they want to have a child, because one or the other they can have a child. And we know it sucks to go through hard times. If you want to have a biological child and you just can't for some reason, and I'd say here's my number. Call me if you want to talk about that. And encourage them to pursue it if they feel like that's something that they need to do, but then to also have the other options out that are available, like adoption and
after having gone through pretty much everything you can go through with infertility, pregnancy loss, IVF, everything like that, waiting years and years, I feel like I know everything not to say to people, but it's still hard to know what to say to someone who's going through what we went through, which is interesting because you'd think that, oh, I've been there, done that, I know what would make them feel better and what to say, but it still is, it's such a personal thing. And we have friends and people that we're close to that are going through similar things right now, and the best advice I would have is just to love them. Let them talk to you, cry to you if they need to, and just do whatever they need to support them. But one piece of advice I would give is for them to pray and decide between, I think it's a very personal thing, and to not let other people tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing as far as how and when to grow your family. Just to let that be between a husband, wife, and the Lord, and to trust, the revelation that they receive, and do what they feel is right despite what other people may think or say. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
just what you said.
So I had a C-section, and Logan was actually the one that got to bring Henry over and put him on my chest for the first time. And I just remember having an overwhelming feeling that he was the one that we were waiting for, and that everything that we went through was because he was the one that was supposed to join our family at that specific time. trying to poop. I don't know. Sorry, I'm too. Say for two average people, we sure made a cute baby.
You keep
So
saying
the
that,
same thing about Maddox.
but we haven't seen him grow up yet, so let's wait until he goes to puberty.